Soreness almost to the point where it's like a little bit tender. I generally don't want to go into that soreness or get in the positions where that soreness is created. So like the example that I'm having today is, today's Thursday, so Monday I did like probably 100 to 150 tennis serves, same thing on Tuesday, and then had a match yesterday and played for like an hour and a half, right? So today, like, it's almost tender here, down here, like in this lat region, or kind of like underneath where the shoulder attaches here. So what I want to do is not go into, I don't want to go into the ranges and feel sore there. I want to be able to get into the ranges and actually feel good with getting there, because that's going to help to show my brain that it's okay to take those inhibitors off. And inhibitor just basically mean if there's sore or tightness, it's going to, or like that tenderness, almost like that soreness of tenderness, is it being like that area is being locked down because it feels like it's not ready to support that movement or that motion. So a couple of, like, examples of what I've been messing with is, and this is just one example, like this is an example of a tennis serve, could probably be related to baseball as well for throwing, but it could also be applied to anything like lower half or whatever. But so obviously getting into layback is a position that doesn't feel, like I feel the tenderness there as I get into the layback. So there's different ways that you can get into that position though. So what I've been messing with is I could kind of go in and stretch into that position to where I feel that like tender. I'm not actually using necessarily the muscular contraction to get into that position. So think about, like, if you think about muscular, like how muscles work, agonist, antagonist side on each side of a joint. On the side that your joint is moving, a muscle, like if you're pulling into that position, the muscle is going to be shortening, and the antagonist on the other side is going to be lengthening, right? If we do that well, if one side is contracting, the other side is lengthening, we're not necessarily going to feel a stress. We're not going to feel anything because the muscle is actually going to be doing that, right? And the same thing is if we go back in the opposite direction, as this shortens, this lengthens. When we feel sensations in muscle, it's essentially because that, at least this is the way that I think about it, or that has made sense to me, it's that one side of that is kind of like resisting the other. So in terms of something being sore and tight, you're going to think about that, like the muscle is locking down a little bit to where they don't want to fully shorten, they don't want to fully lengthen, because the brain is getting the information that it's not safe to do that. So as I'm going through these ranges, what I want to do is like literally go in and feel the angles that I'm closing. So like in a shoulder external rotation, it'd be like everything that works to externally rotate the shoulder. I want to be actually pulling those shorter, and I want to be allowing the opposite side of that to lengthen. Because what I feel, if I like almost let the weight take me back, where I'm not actually shortening on those external rotators, then that's where I'm going to feel that tenderness. That's where I'm going to feel that stretch, because we're not actually getting to the point where the muscle is supporting that move. Versus if I can actually shorten the side that I'm pulling to and lengthen that other side, I'm going to actually be able to get to that position without feeling that tenderness or without feeling that restriction, because being able to do that literally takes away the sensation of that restriction, because your muscle is actually getting to the range, which means you don't feel that, like you literally don't feel the inhibition because the muscles aren't working against each other there. So like if I were to go in this position and just kind of let the weight like pull me back, even there is a little bit like painful down there in that armpit, versus if I'm here and I'm thinking like actively shorten that side and actively lengthen that front side, I'm able to get there, and then even as I drive out, I want to think like reverse that. So it's like that action versus more of a passive hangout. Another example of that as it relates to what I'm personally feeling today is if I go up overhead and I want to do a lateral bend, right? If I just kind of go, like I can feel this, I feel a sensation here because it's not necessarily lengthening, I'm more so pulling on those tissues. I'm not really using the tissues, I'm more so pulling on those tissues, right? But they're not really changing length. I don't know if that's what's actually happening, but that's what I'm, like, athletes go off feel, and that's the feel that I'm having, and it makes sense as it relates to like actually shortening and lengthening opposite sides, right? So if I go here and almost like hang out and almost just like let gravity take me down, I can feel that stretch there. Versus if I'm here and I'm like actively shortening on the side that I'm going to, and like actively allowing this side to lengthen here, I can actually get into that range without feeling any sort of like discomfort or tenderness here, right? Versus, so like compare that to if I go here and I just like hang out, I can feel that tenderness there. And same thing, like we want to be able to fully shorten and fully lengthen each side. So if I then go to the right side, like the side that's more tender, I want to be able to fully contract into position there, almost curl myself around my belly button as I go into that, and then back up, versus like going and just hanging out. But point being that when something's tender, when something's sore, if we can, it's probably going to take you to like slow down a little bit, but if we can get into those ranges, and those are just two examples. I would go through every single range pretty much that I have, and hit them at roughly the same volume that I would do those moves at, right? But if we can get into the positions where you're sore, where you're tender, and actually use that musculature to kind of like shorten, lengthen as it's designed to do, we're going to be able to start to show the body, show the brain that you can get into those positions without that feeling of tenderness and soreness, and it's going to allow it to take those inhibitors off.